great. So thanks for coming along this morning. We've got a freezing cold winter morning here in Brisbane this morning. Hopefully it's much nicer where you are than what it is here. What we're going to do today is just go through a case together. We've looked in some other training webinars at different functions, different features of the program. I thought it would be a good idea for us to just focus on the real basic functionality, the things that we use every day, and do it in the context of a real case. So this is actually a case from my practice. It's about 4 or 5 years old now, and this is actually not a super exciting case. This is a regular day-to-day case. It's a regular day-to-day medicine, nothing special or exciting, no showing off of special homeopathy skills here. This is just a boring day-to-day kind of case that we usually see. What I want you to be able to do is focus more on what we're doing in the program and how we access stuff in the program, but a good example for us to work through together. So if we go from the start, we'll just do a very quick general tour. As you likely know already, there's a few different ways for us to get started in the program. But our access to all the different areas, the different sections, is through this window on the left-hand side, the table of contents. So at the moment in the table of contents, you can see all my repertories, which I get to by clicking the repertories button here. I can also click the Materia Medica button, see my Materia Medica documents, my Patients button to bring up my patient file. Remedies is the place I can access the individual remedies, and via families I can access the family groupings. So essentially the 5 major different types of information or different sections we're going to deal with in homeopathy. So what I'm going to do today, because we're working on a real patient case, I'm going to start just by creating a patient file. So you can see if I click on the Patients button, it brings up my Patients table of contents. And I'm going to create a new patient file. So just to the right of that Patients button, you can see there's a little drop-down arrow. If I click the drop-down arrow, I have an option here, Create a New Patient, and click it. So this brings up an area where I can start putting in information about my patient. So I'm going to choose to enter the administrative information first. This is essentially the first 5 minutes of a consultation where I'm basically saying, what's your name, what's your contact details, all those sort of questions that we ask someone. So let's put my client name in here, Richard. Very interesting surname of case example. Birthday. Just type in here. So I'm just going through each of these sections, clicking the option that suits me or typing into the part that I want. And you can see I've got all my basic contact details, client's name, etc. I can put their place of birth details, their address, just by clicking the word address, and it will come up with their options. So I'm just going through typing them in here, okay? Okay, I won't do any more because you don't need to watch that. But this is the basic place where we can start to enter our administrative information. But once I've done that, that'll be my first couple of minutes with a client. Of course, my next question is, what brings you here today? So I'm going to click Save to remember their administrative information. Okay, he saved it for me. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go, I was in the Administrative tab. I'm just going to click on the Consultations tab. And this is the start where you're obviously going to start asking questions, start putting information in. So if you're typing your case into the computer as you're case taking, this is the area you can do that. I'm not going to put you through the boredom of watching me type the whole case in, so I've got one that I've copied. There we go. Okay, great. So case typed in here. So I'll just take this up to full screen. What I'm going to do is hide the table of contents so this case fills the whole screen, just by clicking this button in the bottom corner, Hide Table of Contents. Okay, so this is the case. So this is it's a male, so I think 23 or thereabouts at the time. We'll call him Richard. And his chief complaint was asthma-like breathing problems, which he's had ever since he was a child. It's not diagnosed as asthma because his family's never seen a GP, but essentially it's asthma. So nurse friend tells me that the symptoms, they're worse for cold, or if he gets a chill when uncovered in the night time, and the symptoms then last through the night and all of the next day. It's worse for exertion, but goes away quickly once he's able to get to sleep properly and will be gone the next day on waking. So usually it's something that he experiences in the evening towards bedtime when it's colder and he's getting ready to go to sleep. He says that his chest feels tight, he cannot get a deep breath, yawning ameliorates that tightness, the chest feels restricted, he gets very anxious, annoyed, frustrated and upset by the asthma. He's really sick of it, and he was really quite aggressive in saying how fed up he was with the asthma symptoms. Because of the breathing, And the anxiety about that, he gets even more anxious that he won't be able to get to sleep, and he's very worried about the loss of sleep due to the asthma. He's better if warm in bed, better for occupation in the daytime, and worse at night time when focusing on it when trying to get to sleep. His big concern is if he can't get to sleep because of it, he won't be able to do his job as well the next day. He's had this problem since he was a child. It's always been there. He's really annoyed it's still there. It interrupts his life and his sleep. He has to focus on his breathing, which interrupts his activities. He gets angry, frustrated and anxious. He says people should be able to do what they want to do and shouldn't have to think about it. They should just be able to go and do it. Breathing's supposed to be an involuntary action. He shouldn't have to try so hard to do it. It should just happen. It should be simple. Interestingly, he goes on to say that he often feels this way about life in general. People should just do what they're supposed to do. If it's your job, you should just do it. He gets very angry and frustrated by people who don't do things when they're supposed to do it. He likes things to be organised and done the right way. He says he can be very irritable, but he's also a very sensitive type person. It came up during the chat that he has a fear he's going to get Alzheimer's disease, as his grandmother had that. He doesn't want to have to rely on other people or be a hindrance or be helpless. Just wants to be able to do things when he wants to. He says it would be lonely to be like that, to have Alzheimer's, to not know your own family. He's got a strong fear of being alone, even though he's a 23-year-old healthy kind of person. He's actually quite anxious to be in the house by himself overnight in case something should happen or go wrong. His other complaint is lower backache. It's worse for standing all day. He's got a job where he's on his feet most of the day. It's better if he's able to move around, and his back aches when he first lies in bed in the evening at night time, same time that his asthma plays up. So that's the case. Probably you've got some guesses as to what the medicine is already. It's not a especially complicated case. So let's go through and have a look. Basically, for me, when I'm working, I use the computer for all aspects of my practice because everything's on there. I just carry the computer around. So this is actually the notes that I typed into the computer during the case taking. They're the actual notes in the order that I took them. So what I'm doing as I'm typing them in, primarily typing my notes in. I'm lucky that I'm a touch typist, so I can just type away while I'm still focusing on my client. And then from here, take this information, go into the repertory and try and find out information about what it is I'm looking at. So let's go back to looking at how to get from here to the repertory. So I'm going to bring back my table of contents just by clicking on the Show Table of Contents in the bottom corner. So if I wanted to go into a repertory, I can click my Repertories tab. And this brings up a list of all the repertories that are available in my program. I'm going to open up Synthesis, so S-Y-N-T, Synthesis, and I can just click it here. And you'll see it opens up in this right-hand viewing section my Synthesis repertory. So I've got 3 tabs essentially here at the moment. I've got my Synthesis repertory tab, I've got my Patient tab, and I have the RadarOpus welcome screen that I keep there when I launch the program. I'll just close that one down now because we don't need that anymore. Okay, so now we've gone back to 2 tabs. I've got my Synthesis repertory and I've got my patient's details here. So what I can do is go directly back and forth between these 2 tabs, going from my notes in one to the other one and finding the information that I'm looking for. So I'll hide that table of contents to give you guys full screen view. Okay, so let's have a look here. So chief complaint, asthma-like breathing problems. First thing of course I could do is find a generic rubric for asthma. I'm not going to do that today. We'll look at focusing on some more specific ones. So we'll go down to the modalities. I've got an aggravation from cold or chill if uncovered in night, and symptoms will then last through the night and all of the next day. So if I go back to my repertory, so one of the rubrics that I took was respiration, difficult, cold air aggravates. And that's actually the first rubric that I took. So there's a few ways for us to find that in the repertory. I've actually got a couple of new repertory features here that are coming out in the next update you're about to see. So I'll show you the existing versions that you've got, but I'll also give you a bit of a sneak preview of some of the new repertory navigation tools which are about to come. So one of the first things I can do, and of course I want to pick the chapter. In this case I've told you the rubric already, we're looking for the respiration chapter. So I'm going to search for that by going to search, click the drop down arrow with my mouse, and I've got my first option here, find a rubric with the binoculars, or F2. I could also click F2 on my keyboard. If I click that, that brings up the list of chapters that are in my repertory. So in this case you can see all my synthesis chapters. I'm going to go to the respiration chapter just by clicking with my mouse on the picture of the lungs here where it says respiration. And this brings up my listing of all the sections of the respiration chapter. I was looking at the rubric for difficult. So just with my keyboard I'm typing in DIF, And you can see that as I start typing, all the other options disappear from this window here. So I can just see difficult remaining. I'm going to click that. This brings up a list in here, all my subsections. So I could scroll down through that. Or I know I'm going to cold in this instance. I could just start typing cold. And I'm going to click on where I want cold. And I've got more sub-rubrics here. Air, I'll click on air. Where you see this little plus sign, it indicates that there's more sub-rubrics below that level. So I'll click air. And we can see I've got two options here now, either aggravates or ameliorates. In this particular case, it was aggravates. So I'm going to click that with my mouse. And that takes me back to the repertory now. So you see I've left that navigation screen, I've gone into my repertory, and I'm looking at the rubric respiration, difficult, cold air, aggravates. Here's the rubric here, 18 medicines in it. And just using my mouse, I'm going to drag and drop that rubric into my clipboard. So you can see little number 1 appears just below my clipboard, and that's my first rubric placed into the clipboard here. So if I look at another one, another rubric that I took was respiration, difficult, exertion after aggravates. So if I go back, we'll do the same process again. So I'm going to go to my drop-down arrow, find a rubric, respiration chapter. Again, I'm going to go to difficult, so I could either scroll with my mouse or just start typing with my keyboard. I push D, I, F. Here's difficult. I'll click enter. I'm going to exertion. On my keyboard, E, X, E, R. Enter. After, A, F, enter, A for aggravates, and I'll click enter again. And you can see that takes me back to the repertory, and again shows me my rubric respiration, difficult, exertion after aggravates. Here's a rubric with all the medicines here, and I drag and drop that one into my clipboard. So there are a couple of respiration rubrics that I took, so I could just go back to my notes again. So I'm going to go back by clicking on this tab. And keep reading some more of the details here. So we've got the aggravation by cold, we've got the aggravation by exertion. Now, let's have a look here. The yawning ameliorates I actually thought was a really good symptom, but unfortunately it wasn't in the repertory, so I didn't get to use it. I guess I miss out on that one. Oh, actually there was, no sorry, I'm lying to you, there was a yawning ameliorates. So let's go back to the yawning ameliorates. I'll show you a different way of doing it now though. We're still in the respiration chapter, but rather than using my mouse and clicking that button up the top, I'm just going to start typing the word respiration. So I'm just going to go to my keyboard, push the letter R, and you can see up comes the chapters that start with the letter R. In this case I've got two options, rectum or respiration. So either using the keyboard or the mouse, you can choose the chapter, respiration, and I had yawning after ameliorates. So just going down step by step and clicking on the options that I want. Just 3 medicines here, and I'll drag and drop that one into my clipboard. Okay, beautiful. So there are all the respiration rubrics that I took. So let's go back to the case again. Okay, great. So I took obviously quite a few mind symptoms for this guy. He had quite a lot of interesting mind symptoms that were very similar to his, very related and also similar to his respiration symptoms. If we go through here, he says, so irritability. He's got irritability. So one of the first mind symptoms I took was mind chapter. So go to drop down, find a rubric, mind, and I went to irritability. So I, R, R, IT, enter. So I've got here my options, all the different sub-rubrics for irritability, and I chose a smaller rubric, easy irritability. This was actually a really strong symptom. He was actually quite irritable even when I spoke to him. I think he would be a difficult chap to be around sometimes, this fella. So here we go, mind, irritability, easy, and I drag and drop that one, pop it in my clipboard. Big symptom, of course, there was lots of anxiety going around with his respiration. That was one of the big things he complained about. I remember he was saying, we go back up here, he gets very anxious, annoyed, frustrated, upset by the asthma. He's really sick of it. Because of the breathing and the anxiety, he gets more anxious, so he won't be able to get to sleep, and he's really worried if he misses out on his sleep, he won't be able to perform as well in his job the next day. So I took a rubric for anxiety together with respiration problems. So if we pretend for a moment that we don't know where that rubric is, let's have a look at how we might be able to search for that rubric when we don't know where it is. So I'm going to go back to my repertory tab. And of course one thing I can do is just in my simple search box at the top here is type in some of the keywords I'm looking for. So I could type in, for example, anxiety with respiration, and I'm just going to click the enter on my keyboard. So the program's doing a search for me here. It's actually searching all documents. I've got my default set to search all documents at the same time for all information where people have got anxiety as a concomitant symptom to respiratory problems. So we can see in my search results here, my first section, I've got synesis, respiratory that I'm in. Here are all my anxiety with respiration problem symptoms, but also my table of contents pops back up and shows me all the other repertories and materia medicas that have got information about anxiety during respiration. So if I look here at my search results, the actual rubric that I took was mind, anxiety, respiration with impeded, which you can see is the second on the list here, mind, anxiety, respiration with impeded. So you can read that list and choose which is the best rubric for the symptom that you're looking for. You can actually drag and drop from this window directly to your clipboard. So I could take this rubric here, my mouse, drag and drop it into my clipboard. You can see it's appeared in that clipboard now. Or if you click on these search results, it's going to take you to that rubric in the repertory. So if you want to go back and look at it in the repertory document, that's the other way to do it. So let's do that again. One of the other rubrics I took for this person was mind fastidious because of his big focus on things have to be done the right way and everything should be simple and done the way they're expected. So if we pretend for a moment I don't know where fastidious is, again, I can just type fastidious. Click enter. So it's going through, doing a search. There we go, it's done a search on all the documents. So here's all the repertories, the concepts, all the materia medicas with information about fastidious. You can see the first one I've got on display here is synthesis, my default repertory. So I can go mind fastidious and I can drag and drop from here directly into my clipboard. Or if I click it, so it's my left mouse button, I'll click that, takes me to the repertory. Here's fastidious and I can drag and drop that into my clipboard. You can see here I've also got some cross-references. In this case I didn't actually use any of these, but if you wanted to you can use these cross-references to go directly to the rubric. I could go to Sensorious, for example, is perhaps another good rubric for this person. I didn't use it, but if I can click on Sensorious, it takes me to that rubric in the repertory. Okay, great, so that's another rubric, and that's another rubric. Let's go through and make sure I get them all for you guys. Okay, we got that one. Okay. So another rubric that I took, going back to this anxiety with him, he said the big thing that he was worried about with his anxiety about his asthma was that it affects his job. There's a really strong work focus in this particular patient. So I took a rubric for his focus on work and getting stuff done and getting things done quickly. So the rubric that I took was mind industriousness. So if I go back to the repertory, I want to go to the mind chapter. So just using my keyboard, if I push the letter M, you can see up comes my navigation window with all the chapters that start with the letter M. I can see the first one is mind, so either using the enter button on my keyboard or using my mouse, I'll click on that. Again, it brings up a list of all the sections of the mind chapter. I used the generic industrious rubric. I'll click on that. So I didn't go any further into sub-rubrics. I could have perhaps gone a little smaller if I wanted to. In this case I didn't. So again, I'm going to go to mind, industrious in the repertory. I can do that by clicking enter on my keyboard or clicking the go to button down the bottom here. So I've got mind, industriousness, and I'll drag and drop that one, pop it in my clipboard. Okay. So another rubric that I took for him, he spoke for quite a long time about his fear of having Alzheimer's. His grandmother had it. Was actually quite a strong fear. There was a lot of anxiety type symptoms with this young fellow. So I chose a rubric for this fear of getting a disease. So let's have a look at, go back to searching. We'll look at a different way of doing searching. The search we did before, we just type in keywords into this search box at the top. There is also an advanced search tool which you can access by clicking on this search button just here. So this brings up our search window. You can see we've actually got a previous search that we did here before. I'm going to click the eraser just to get rid of that previous search. So I could type also my search results I'm looking for here. So what you see at the moment is a simple search version. It's very much similar to this bar at the top here, just a place you can start typing in the search that you're looking for. If I change that to the advanced search mode, it gives me a few more options for what I'm searching for. At the top here you can see there's two search modes. We've got the simple search with just one line, essentially like this one line you see down the bottom here at the moment, or I've got the advanced search. I'm going to change the advanced search. So the advanced search breaks things up into sections. It gives us the options to identify the words we're looking for or remedies we're looking for, or families, kingdom groupings we're looking for, or if we're looking for information about cases, chapters, or pathologies. So this is another way you can do the search. Results will be the same, but this gives you the ability to specify those small independent kind of groupings. So in this case, I'm looking for information about fear of getting sick. So I'm going to type in the word disease, fear of getting a disease. So that's the word that I'm looking for, disease. I could also add together with that the word fear, or perhaps a different thing I want to show you is I could say I'm going to look for all information about diseases, but I'm going to look for it specifically in the mind chapter because I'm looking for a mental symptom. Someone's got a fixation on getting sick. So under my chapters section here, I can type in the word mind, and you can see it gives me all my options. I'm going to choose mind as a chapter. So essentially what I've done here is said I want you to show me all the rubrics in the mind chapter that have got the word disease in them. And you can see again in the top left hand corner here, my default is set to search in all documents. It will search all repertories, all Materia Medica, everything all at the same time. I could specify it and say actually I want to search only the open repertories because I'm just dealing with synthesis at the moment. So here we go, here's my search. So this has gone through the mind chapter and found all the rubrics with the word disease in them. So I can see here I've got anger about disease, delusions about disease. Here we go, here's the fear of disease section. So the rubric I actually took was mind, fear, disease of impending. I wanted a nice broad one. It would have been good to have a nice interesting fear of Alzheimer's rubric, but there wasn't one there. So I took fear of disease impending as a generic substitute. So we'll pop that one in my clipboard. I also took thinking about complaints aggravates as a mind symptom because it was he said in several different places his symptoms were much worse if he was thinking about them, better for distraction. So we'll go back to our search and have a look at how to find that one together. So I'm just going to go back to my search tab. I'm going to click the eraser to clear that last search and say, okay, I'm looking for people who, for thinking, so that's my first word. Click enter. It gives me the option to put in the second word. I'm going to put in aggravates. People who are thinking about their complaints aggravates. I click enter again to start my search. So it's going through the synthesis repertory because I've still got it set to search in the open repertories only. And here's a list of all the rubrics that have got that combination of thinking aggravates. So I can look, here we go, mind, thinking, aggravates, mind, thinking, complaints, aggravates, thinking of complaints, that's the one I want. So again, same as before, I could drag and drop directly from here into my clipboard, or just to show you a different way of doing it, I'm going to click it, go to the repertory. The other way you can do it if you're a keyboard user is just by typing a plus sign on your keyboard. So essentially, like add, saying I want to add this rubric into my clipboard. So if I do that now on my clipboard, just do Shift Enter, type an Enter sign, the same as I would in any other program. Up comes this take window. It gives me some options here. I could type in shortcut commands if I know the shortcut commands, or under my options, I can choose which clipboard I want to put it in, if I want to select only certain grades, if I want to use the cross-references, the sub-rubrics, etc. as well, I can edit all those things. I'm just going to leave it with the default options, so I can either click enter on my keyboard if I want to stick to the keyboard, or click the take button with my mouse. Take, there we go, we've popped that one into my clipboard. Okay. So one more mind rubric I took was fear of being alone in the evening. I thought that was kind of strange for a young healthy guy who's not particularly the person I would associate with being afraid to be alone in the house at night time and wanting to have a friend come over to be with them because they're scared to be by themselves. So we'll go to that rubric now. I'm going to show you a way you'll be able to get into this in the next update. In the next update, we've introduced a new button which takes you directly into the chapters, which is this button up here. You'll see the binoculars. Be very familiar if you are a Radar user before RadarOpus. If I click the binoculars, again, this just takes me directly into the chapters. I'm going to go into the mind chapter. And I'm going to go to the fear section, which I can either scroll through with my mouse or with my keyboard, F-E-A-R, and I can click that or click enter. So you can see in the header, mind, fear, all my sub-rubrics, alone of being, I'll click enter. In the evening, enter, and I click go to down the bottom to take me to that rubric in the repertory, and I'm going to drag and drop that one into my clipboard. Okay. So almost done with the rubrics. There's two more that I took. I also took 2 rubrics for the back pain. That was, again, like the asthma, were nearly a daily symptom, back pain and asthma. So the symptom I took was back pain in the lumbar region, standing aggravates. So again, we'll go to that one. I'm going to click my binoculars. I'm going to go to the back chapter. I'm going to go to pain by typing pain, P-A-I-N, enter, lumbar, L-U-M-B, enter, and it was standing, enter, aggravates, enter. So that's the rubric I want, back pain, lumbar, standing, aggravates. I click the enter, take me into the repertory. Here we go here. So I can drag and drop that to my clipboard. I could type the plus sign using my keyboard to get this take command come up. Or if you're a mouse user, there's also two mouse ways of doing it. One you'll see there at the moment. I could go to take and then choose option I want to take it. I'll just take it with intensity 1 to standard grading. Or you're also about to have an icon appear here where you can say take with intensity 1. You'll see that same icon actually also appears in the navigation window in the next update that's about to come out. So if you wanted to, you don't even need to go back to the repertory. You can just go directly from this navigation window, and that's coming out in the next update, which is probably about a week or so away from reaching you. I'll cancel that, close that one down. And the last one I took was back pain motion ameliorates. So we'll go to that. I'll do the keyboard version this time. So with my keyboard, I'll just push letter B. Here's my B chapters. I'm going to choose back, pain, P-A-I-N, enter, motion, M-O-T-I, enter, and it was ameliorates, A-M-E, enter. That's far enough for me. I'll click enter again, take me to the repertory, and I drag and drop that into the clipboard. So they're the rubrics that I actually used, and when I was working on this case, you'll see this is not a wonderfully polished case. I didn't bring a fancy version out for you today. This is just the rubrics that occurred to me as I was sitting there with the client in front of me. It's probably better ones that I could use, I would use now in hindsight, but this is actually a repetition that I did. So what I've just done there is I've clicked my clipboard. I'll show you that again. Sorry, I skipped ahead on you guys a little bit. If I click the clipboard, this brings up my repetization results. So here's a repetization. I've got in my clipboard my rubrics down the side here. I'll just stretch that out a little bit so you can see them all. There we go. And on the right hand side I've got my remedies. Excuse me. Alright, so there's a few different ways, and one thing I want to show you today, the big advantage with having a computer repetization, other than the fact that the computer does the maths in about 3 seconds, is that the computer can actually do the maths in a whole variety of different ways. And the default way, what you see on my screen at the moment, is the kind of standard version that we all learn at homeopathy school, where you add up the number of rubrics and medicines in, you add up the weighting of them and come up with a score. So you can see, for example, my first medicine here is pulsatilla. It's in 9 rubrics with a total score of 12. So you can see I've got 9 rubrics. If I add up 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2, I get a score of 12. Compared to lycopodium, it's in 8 rubrics with a score of 15, etc., going on down the list. So down the bottom of this window, you've actually got an option where you can choose different analysis strategies, and I use this quite frequently. It can be really useful to draw your attention towards different medicines. So you can see here the strategy I've got at the moment is sum of symptoms sorted by degree, which is essentially saying how many rubrics, what's the weighting, and that gives us our standard list. But there's different options here that can be really, really useful. Especially you'll see a lot of these rubrics I use are actually quite large rubrics, so they're not particularly characteristic. This guy didn't have any especially outstanding, weird, peculiar, strange little symptoms that would make you immediately think of any one specific medicine. This is kind of standard day-to-day symptoms that standard day-to-day folks are going to tell you. So one of the advantages with software is that we can use this to bring the focus back towards things that are more characteristic homeopathically. So an option that I use quite a bit to do that is the option prominence. It's essentially saying which medicines are very prominent in these particular symptoms. It's going to draw their focus back towards the smaller, more characteristic rubrics with the medicines that are higher graded in those particular rubrics. So if I click that, as you can see, this changes my order a little bit. Actually swaps lycopodium and pulsatilla. So this says lycopodium comes up stronger using a prominence strategy, because lycopodium has got stronger weighting in smaller, more characteristic rubrics, where pulsatilla probably had lesser rating, but it was in the bigger, more general rubrics. We can see we've still got calicarb, nux, voms, orders changed, sponges changed, phosphorus, lachesis, etc. So you can jump back and forth between these as much as you want, and different strategies will emphasize different things. If I was looking at this thinking these are all polycrests, this is not the one that I'm wanting, I could say emphasize the small remedies for me. And you can see up comes meta-item, great asthma medicine, Sponger, vanilla, Staph aureus, Kali sulph, or I could say emphasize the smaller rubrics. Okay, so pulsatilla we can see is coming up stronger in the smaller rubrics, followed by Staph, Kali carb, Sponger, etc. So you can change back and forth between these various strategies as much as you want to and see how that affects your results. And sometimes it will make a very big difference to medicines that will come up. I've had cases where using a strategy like prominence will suggest a medicine that's perhaps only in 2 or 3 out of 6 or 7 rubrics because it's very strong in those particular symptoms. They're very characteristic and you might draw my attention to a medicine I didn't think of otherwise. So that can be really useful. So obviously from here, the next step we want to do is start looking at our Mature Medica selection, which means going through our medicines that have come up and choosing or finding out more about them and choosing which one we may want to use. So the way that Opus works is it's just a case really of clicking on the medicines or right-clicking or left-clicking in order to find out more about them. So we'll say, for example, I want to find out more about pulsatilla. I want to go read the Mature Medica for pulsatilla, find if this is the particular medicine for my client. It's come up quite highly ranked in different strategies I've looked at. So there's 2 ways I can do that. One is I can just do it with my mouse, do a right click on where it says pulsatilla, and this brings me up options to search for more information. I can go straight to the keynotes or search for Mature Medicas, etc. The other option is I can just do a left click. If I left click on pulsatilla, this will actually bring up the specific pulsatilla remedy information window. So this is a section of the program devoted to finding out more information about pulsatilla. So we can see here I've got Franz Mullen's passport. This is information about the botanical information about the source substance for pulsatilla. I've got all the family groups that pulsatilla belongs to. I've also got some multimedias if I want to see pictures of pulsatilla. And the useful thing here is that I've got my keynotes of pulsatilla. So the way that I work with the software is pretty much, the majority of the time I'm going to go directly from my repertorization directly to a keynotes, have a read, refresh my memory about that medicine and see does it fit the case. So in this case I can go through read pulsatilla and see does this fit the particular, really I've chosen mental symptoms, respiratory symptoms and back symptoms for this case. There wasn't any particularly good physical generals that came up. From here I could find out more information if I want to. Say based on my reading of pulsatilla, this is a fairly good fit for my case perhaps. I'll say search for this remedy in, and then I can choose. I'll say let's search for it in all Mature Medica. So the program goes through, does a search for me, and here's all the Mature Medicas with information about pulsatilla. If I've got a particular one I like to go to, I quite often use Vermeulen's Concordant, I could just start typing in here, C-O-N-C for Concordant, and it limits the options down to just the ones that fit that. I can see here's Vermeulen's Concordant. If I click it, here is Vermeulen's Concordant Mature Medica, and I can have a read of that, see if it fits my case. So I'm going to go back to my analysis. I'll pretend that we've decided pulsatilla doesn't fit. This person was much too stubborn and rigid and structured and organized for pulsatilla. Some of the particular symptoms doesn't fit. Pulsatilla wasn't particularly great, especially for the back symptoms. So let's go back to the analysis. My next medicine, Lycopodium. So again, same thing. I can either right-click on it and go from here directly to, say, the keynotes of the remedy. Let's bring up this remedy information section. Here's my keynotes. And from this window, I can say, search for this remedy in. Let's search for it in, say, we'll go all Mature Medica. Again, here's all the Mature Medicas with information about Lycopodium. If I click on Allen, Encyclopedia, Pure Mature Medica, here's Allen's Encyclopedia. I can read the proving document, the information about Lycopodium from there. Also, that doesn't fit. I'll go back to my analysis. Kali carb. I'll do a click on Kali carb and bring up the Kali carb remedy information section. Here's my keynotes for Kali carb. Rigid, flexible, dogmatic, systematic, proper, can be sensitive, hypersensitive. That sounds like a better fit for the mental symptoms. I'll scroll down. Let's see if there's respiratory stuff. Here we go. Asthmatic, aggravation 2 to 4 a.m. They didn't have that so much. Aggravation from lying flat was a big symptom. Okay, that's interesting. So Kali carb might be a good fit. I'll go from here, search in all Mature Medica. This brings up all the Kali carb Mature Medica for me. And I'm going to say, again, I'll go to Concordant because I really like Concordant. Click it, and I can go through and read more details. So we always don't need to read through in a whole lot more detail. This was a case where I did give Calicarb. It worked very, very well. But that's the basic idea of how to get to that information from that repetrization that you've done in the analysis. Bring the tab back up. You've got all your medicine names across the top here, and you can just click on any one of these to find out more information about them. It will take you directly to that remedy information window. So we'll do it here for Nux vomica. Here's my remedy information window, and I've got my keynotes, my multimedia, my family groupings. I've got passport information from Vermeulen, and I've also got the ability to go from here and search any document. So I could say, show me the Materia Medica, show me the proving, show me the keynotes. I could do a repertory extraction, show me all open repertories, and this brings up all the rubrics that medicine belongs in the current repertory that I'm in. This is essentially, it's a window to find direct access to any information about any medicine that you can see the name of in your analysis there. So if we skip to the answer part so that you guys can stop thinking about that. So I gave Calicarb for this particular client. I actually started off just giving him one dose of 200C, just as a single dose, and spoke to them about a week later, and they were about 70% better after that first dose. That did really, really well. We repeated the 200C several times across 6 months or so, eventually went up to an M, and again repeated the 1M several times across another 6 months or so, and he's doing great now. He's gone from having backache and asthma as a daily symptom to maybe once or twice a year, usually when he's got a cold and it's cold weather and he's run down at the same time, symptoms pop up and he just repeats the medicine and it settles down very nicely. So nice, a simple Calicarb type case. So we're going back to the program. From here, what I want to do, of course, I want to save the details of the repetrization that I've done and also the prescription that I've given to my patient. So from this window here, you can see I've got my option analysis. This is where I am at the moment. I'm in my analysis. If I click the drop down, I've got the option save the current analysis. So I want to take this repetrization and attach it to the file for Richard. So I'll click save current analysis. This brings up a window here. I've got a few options. And the first one that's automatically selected, it's saved the current analysis to an existing patient. And I can see I've got my Richard case example with today's date for today's consultation. So I'm just going to click on today's date. And that's basically saying this is the consultation I want to attach it to. So if you've got 10 different consultations for that person, you'll see the 10 different consultation dates there. If you don't have any consultation just yet, it'll give you an opportunity to prompt and create one. So I'm saying click on that and I'm going to click save. Okay. So that's saved there. You can see down the bottom it says your analysis was successfully saved, one clipboard with 12 rubrics, 815 remedies. So that repetrization has been now attached to that patient file. So if I go back to my patient file, I'm going to click on patients at the top here. You can see here's Richard, or I can click on the tab, Richard, case example. I've got a repetrizations patient analysis button here. Click it, I can see here is the consultation, the analysis for that particular consult. If I click it, it opens up that repetrization for me. In this case, obviously it's still in my clipboards, but when I come back to it tomorrow, I'll show you now. Actually, I'll clear that clipboard. So I'll do a right click on that, clear this clipboard. Right, so refresh, I've gone back to an empty clipboard. If I go back to Richard and click on my analysis, so it brings it back up again. I can look at that at a later date, make changes in a follow-up, etc. Also, the other thing I want to do with Richard is type in what medicine I gave them. So this actually, the layout here has actually changed slightly in this update that's about to come, but you'll still have the same button in yours at the moment. This button here says prescriptions and other tests. So if I click on that, that brings up my options here to enter the prescription. So consultation date, I'll click on it, it automatically puts in today's date. Therapy, I could choose particular medicine that I use. In this case, I use Calicarb, so I just type it in. Go, Calicarb. Potency, so I've got all my different options here, or I can just type, I use a 200. Dilution, just a centesimal. Okay, and I don't keep a track of which laboratory, which pharmacy I used. Posology, and I use it as an oral dose. Oral drops and a single dose initially. So there's my prescription. So on 11th of June, I gave Calicarb, 200C, and I just gave a single dose. So again, same as before, I can just click save. So we can see here now, under my consultations, here's my repetrization for that day, here's my prescription for that day, and I can see my list of consultations, and here's also my text. So that's all the information that I saved about that particular patient from this consultation.